Presented by the Making Star Wars Podcasting Network. This is the Cantina Cast. Your watering hole for thought-provoking Star Wars discussion. Character dissections. Quote and scene analysis. Honest opinions on the Star Wars news that interests you. And whatever else these guys come up with. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joao.
Welcome to episode 187 of the Cantina Cast. This is titled The Power of Luke Skywalker. Oh, well, maybe that is the title. I don't know. I haven't decided yet as we record this. But we're basically going to be talking about how powerful Luke Skywalker could be in The Last Jedi. And it's kind of an oxymoron because Jedi aren't supposed to be craving power and all that other stuff. But it'll be an interesting discussion, as always, Joe. So with that, hi, Joe. How are you doing? I almost forgot to introduce you.
Hello there. Yeah, this is my second podcast of today. And the first one was actually for the Cantina Cast as well. I was on location with Monster Nick, as I affectionately call him. My local friend here who we just met up, become friends, and he likes Star Wars. He loves giant monsters, and we tied the two together. And so we're going to have that coming up for you guys in about a week. We plan on releasing that the next episode, but you never know. Things could change depending on if there's some high quality news or something that drops and we need to cover it. But other than that, give the shout out to Nick, because you guys will be hearing him sooner rather than later, regardless. So that's my intro.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that, and that's an episode I'll hardly be on, and that'll be great. But I'll be editing a lot of it. But anyway, let's get into. I'm
glad to say, Mike, there's not a whole lot to edit. It's a pretty clean recording. He had his own mic. He's like an audio guy, teaches audio at a college. I brought my system. He hooked his mic right into my board here. And so it was beautiful, and I don't think you'll have any problems. So hopefully everybody enjoys that when it comes out.
We shall see, because I get annoyed as an editor sometimes. I mean, and not only just because of us, but, things happen.
Well, there was a landline phone ringing in the background, and because we were at his father-in-law's house, and we couldn't stop it. And so it was I could have just muted the entire thing, but he was in the middle of talking, and I didn't want to mess up his rhythm. So I'm going to go ahead and warn you right now that might be
you
there.
Didn't tell me that. So now,
because I know how angry you get as an editor, so I didn't want to tell you. I don't even know if you know my microphone system, Mike. I'm not even sure you'll be able to hear it. It wasn't in the same room as us, so if it is there, it'll be so faint. The listeners, you guys, y'all will deal with it, right? Y'all got my back, I think.
Oh, I'm going to be an angry man. But anyway, we'll move on here. So we got some kind of important news to get to before we get into the main topic here. And one of them was, I wasn't surprised by this comment by Adam in the Huffington Post there. And you didn't even hear about it. I sent the text over to you and said, did you hear what Adam said? And whatnot. And the thing that jumped out at me and what I thought was important and where I thought he was going, Rian Johnson, the director, at least I had hoped when we initially heard, when the early reports when Kasdan said it's weird or whatever he said about the script, it's just different or whatever, is the fact that he goes on to say Johnson created new rules for the Star Wars universe and it balances the familiar and the unfamiliar very adeptly. So to me, and I'll let you speak on the comments in a second, Joe, that's what stuck out as me is the fact that, because a lot of people, as we know recently, Joe, are complaining that The Force Awakens is very much A New Hope or, a blend of all three or all these other, and that's not a bad thing. And maybe that was a good thing to relaunch the franchise in a sense and get it back on track and everything else. So it had to be more familiar, and it had to be, I don't even want to use this term because it's an awful term, but I'll use it just for the sake of using it, safe, in air quotes. You know what I mean? Like, they couldn't go into a territory, like, too much off the farm and away from the familiar stuff. Now, Ryan, in the second episode in the sequel or the trilogy or even the prequels, always has to take those risks, I guess you could say, to move the story where it really needs to go. Like, there needs to be that conflict and all that other stuff. So I thought it was great. Hopefully Ryan does change things. And you've always said, and you said before when we came back, you said we're going to learn something about the Force that we didn't know about. Of course, you were one movie off, I think, Joe. You said it would be in The Force Awakens. It'll probably happen here in The Last Jedi, maybe even 9. Who knows? We're not sure. But I am hoping we break new ground and try new things, which is something George always said. He said it to Dave Filoni a few times. I remember you bringing up on the podcast, Joe, where, you were talking about Dave, and David said, one of the things that George told me was don't be afraid to take risks. Now, you got to stay within the realm of the franchise. You can't, or the mythology part of the franchise. You can't get too crazy, I don't think. But what do you think of the comments that your buddy Adam said about Rian Johnson here?
Well, I like the word he uses, ambiguity. I probably just said that wrong, but I tried to just spit it out there as fast as I could, hoping I said it right. Because
I think you did it right. We did it right
one of those
time,
words where it's like I read it right in my head, but it's like
when I do a name.
Yeah, it's like
when I pronounce a name.
I could say it. Now, I'd like to hear you say that guy who plays for the Milwaukee Bucks. Because I can't even say his name. Or Alabama's freshman quarterback. I'll get with you later on that. See if you can say it. Because I can't say
Probably not. I still add an R to Yoda. So,
Yoda?
Yoda.
So anyway, about when he talks about the ambiguity.
See, when you think about it, that's when it happens.
Now I've screwed myself. You guys know what word I'm trying to say. Oh, God, that's funny. So he's talking about he respects the audience can handle that. Or he's respecting his audience that they can handle that. But I think in a lot of ways, when you look back at A New Hope and you just take it, like George Lucas didn't give you a lot of background information. Like he's just presenting the idea. And then he explains some things like the Force during the movie. They mention the Clone Wars, but he's just like, there's this evil empire and, these are the good guys. And you kind of just have to figure kind of the rest out, like, well, why is this happening? Why is that? And then, you've got The Phantom Menace is much in the same way. It's, you don't know really what's going on in the Senate and the Republic. Like, we've never seen the Republic before. Like, this is the first time we've ever seen it. We've heard about it, sort of, kind of, that this is what the Empire took over. So you're leaving a lot to the guessing game, and you're leaving a lot to the audience to kind of figure out themselves, like, okay, this is how it works. Okay. And eventually you get there and you explain a little bit more. But at first, you don't just give away the whole basket of kittens at first. You just gotta, is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing.
It is now. That's one of our Patreon perks now is a basket of kittens.
Oh God. I don't want to be responsible for that. So my thing is like, you just, you don't count your chickens before they're hatched. That is a thing. I know that. So my thing is with this is that, yes, you leave the audience wanting a little something more. And I think Star Wars has always been pretty good about that. With this, though, Adam uses that word balanced, which is going to come up a lot in this episode here in a minute. So I'm kind of intrigued here because he says he makes up new rules for Star Wars. So my mind goes to like these crazy places or places that I can't even fathom. Like, what could he really be talking about here?
Well, the interesting thing is,
I think it's going to be way more subtle than we're reading right here, because he uses the term, that we can handle subtlety basically, but there's all these new rules that are being put into place. So I think you're right. I think that my original prediction years ago is going to somehow come to fruition in some way or form, that we're going to learn things about the Force that we didn't know about.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing with the comments that I took from this is because, a couple of months ago when we broke down the trailer and we had those comments of like, well, there's training involved, but it's not traditional type of what we've seen. And we've said, now granted, what's in the trailer that we saw a couple of months ago doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make the film. And we state that on that episode as well, is the fact that, it looked very much Empire Strikes Back in a lot of ways with the training in that. And so we had even said in that episode, like, all right, it does. You may be saying this, Ryan, but it's not appearing that way. Now, granted, you're not going to throw out all the cards on the table and you're not going to reveal much in the 2-minute trailer, to tease everyone, to get everyone excited and everything. And as we said, we think they just shoot things just for the trailers anyway, to throw us all off anyway, or to just get us excited and stuff. So that I found to be interesting that they're saying, Adam would say here, like he's creating new rules and trying to do something different, break new ground, which I think Star Wars kind of, you can only go so much with things, that's been done before. You know what I mean, Joe? Like you can't go and keep doing the same thing. Now you get the ring theory and stuff, but unfortunately you can't keep going to the well that way. You got to change things up a little bit. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be new ways of going about it. And I think that there's ways to break new ground while still holding true to the universe of Star Wars. And I think basically that's what Adam is trying to say. And, it's just interesting to hear an actor talking about a film 6 months out, or, whatever it is now. It's, close to 5 months out. Man, it's coming quick, man. But I mean, this is not a month after the movie came out where he's still like in promotion mode. Like he's promoting this movie, and we know, or at least I think I know, what kind of an actor Adam Driver is. And he's not the kind of, obviously he's been being asked questions about Star Wars all the time. And, I watched the show Girls up until the end, and it was funny. And one of the after things, they were filming on the streets of New York, Lena Dunham and Adam Driver were, and they were like, they were talking behind the scene. Adam wasn't there, but like Lena Dunham and Judd Apatow and stuff. And they were saying how, when they were filming that scene, how kids were just running up to Adam Driver, and he's like a legitimate superstar now. And when they started the show, like nobody knew who the guy was. And then now like kids in New York are running up to him on the street and, Kylo Ren, things like that. So it's just, I mean, his life has completely changed, yet 6 months out, like and this is what Adam, it's not an interview, it's an email. He's like, yeah, just email me. Like that's totally Adam Driver move. It's just like, yeah, just email me. I'll respond.
I'm going to email him. We're just going to email him one day. Hey, Adam, want to come on the show? No,
but you get where I'm going with it. It just seems like he's said these kind of things a few times, and it really, I'm really hopeful that it's correct, because, to keep promoting the movie 6 months out and to just kind of be already on the press junket for it, like it makes me feel like, okay, good. Like this is going to be something special here. I mean, it's going to be Star Wars. It's going to be special to us regardless. And, we might rank it wherever we ended up ranking it on our own personal list. But I think at the end of the day, even the people who don't like the prequels as much, they have to realize that it's still special, or it was special at one moment in your life, because it's a new Star Wars movie. So anyway, I guess that's all I got to say on it.
All right. Well, and just to finish up here is the fact that he points out, and I think this is what really drove Adam to all of this in this, in the sequels here, is the fact that characters and story are his priority, which, and JJ, that was to a degree him and Kasdan and stuff like that. And I think they laid out maybe a foundation with everybody, Daisy, Adam, and everybody, got everyone together and kind of said where they'd like to kind of go. A rough draft, nothing like, oh, you're definitely going here with this character and that stuff. But it's great that is, because Adam's kind of a serious actor, or at least I see him that way. And, as we always joke, like, with Star Wars, no one really takes it that serious as like if you're an actor or something like that. But I don't know. It's just good that characters and story are a driven aspect of it, which is what we want.
I almost wonder if that's changed a little bit, though, Mike, because these guys, they've seen what happens in 2 previous trilogies. You can become Harrison Ford, or you can become, I don't want to point anybody's name out, but, we can all think of somebody's name who, where your life kind of, it doesn't end up the same way as Harrison Ford's did. And, I'm thinking of one person in particular, and it's very unfortunate for them, but you get where, I'm kind of going with that. And so I think these guys they're all serious actors, because this is their livelihood, and that's where they want it to go. And they know Star Wars can be a launching pad to superstardom and to basically immense wealth and they don't ever, and their children's children will be taken care of. And that's something, I mean, they can set up generations of their families. I mean, it's, so if they're not taking it seriously, I would consider them crazy. But anyway.
Well, no, I mean, and the fact that it could be just, to some, it would be looked at as a paycheck, and they'll do it. There's a lot of actors who just.
I get where you're coming from, but and even in 77, well, this is weird, but nobody knew Star Wars was going to be
correct
this or that, and then you had Ewan McGregor, who was already kind of, and that's not who I was talking about earlier, obviously, but he's kind of already kind of was a budding kind of movie star at that point, with Trainspotting, and he was getting it going there. Then he's a young actor, gets on with the Phantom Menace, and so I mean, yeah, I mean that's the thing where I'm just kind of going with that is like, and he always there's reports that he was kind of annoyed and things like that with with the process of making Star Wars and things like that, and so. That's kind of where I'm going with that is like you've had 6 movies where you kind of see the ups and the pitfalls of where you can go as an actor. So, and it's such a big deal and nothing is really gonna, as much as the prequels get hate, it didn't stop The Force Awakens from being a runaway train at the box office. So,
no, true. Yeah.
So these actors know, like, it's like, I need to do the best I can because everyone in the world is going to see this movie, not just audiences, but everyone in Hollywood, everybody who makes movies all around the world will see this movie. And if I do good, that's good for me because that means more jobs for me. And I don't really see how at this point in 2017 with Star Wars, in 77, it was different, but now it's a different ball game.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess the other bit of news, we're going to skip the Phasma and Rey pitches unless you really want to talk about them. I mean, there's not much.
The only thing I was going to say is we see Rey running, but I don't think this is the scene we see in the trailer where she's running because remember in that trailer, like it looked like it was a different kind of like landscape mountain in the background.
Mountainous.
Well, I mean, she's on a mountain basically on Octu. But what I'm saying is it looked like it was like more mountainous, like it was like a landmass and not just an island, I guess you could say. That was the only thing I was going to say. I'm not, who's to say how much she runs in this movie? It could be quite a lot. So,
Well, she's training, so there could be quite a bit of.
Yeah, and she's in shape. Daisy's in shape to do it. I mean, she's running all day long, I guess. So there you go. But anyway, that was the only. I
get exhausted looking at the picture because I'm out of shape now. So
I mean, like I'd get a workout just watching her. So I mean, it's that vigorous. So anyway, I just wanted to, I'll just leave it at that. I don't necessarily think that scene is what we see in the trailer. And we dissected that back when we did the trailer stuff. So I'll leave it at that.
We will continue analyzing the background of Rey in the trailers. And speaking of which...
and later we'll continue analyzing Rey in every way, shape, and form. So that'll be Rey Part 3, and then we'll go into a private episode that we'll do privately. So anyway, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, my God. But anyway, all right. So I guess the big news last week, or maybe at the end of last week, Joe, is no Star Wars presence at San Diego Comic Con. And this didn't seem like a shock to me. And I think I even mentioned it last year or around when The Last Jedi was coming, and how, I don't know why Disney would do stuff with the San Diego Comic Con, especially with D23. They'd want to make that more of a thing itself. And if you got the biggest name in movies franchise, Star Wars, why not just do it at D23? Why not just have people go there and want to be there and stuff? And there's, of course, there's a rumor of a trailer. Of course, that's the big thing. But a lot of people are upset that The Last Jedi, The Last Jedi is not going to be at San Diego Comic Con. And there'll be a presence there. It's just not going to be like an official like panel or anything like that. So, I mean, I don't see it as a bad thing at all, except for maybe us, Joe. We don't have as much content. But again, if they're doing things at D23, we'll do that. We'll cover that, obviously, because that's what we do. We cover the news and everything. But even that, I don't think is going to be as much as people think. If we get a trailer, we get a trailer. If we don't, we don't. I don't know. I mean, do you think it's a big deal, San Diego Comic Con? Do you think it's like, oh my God, we don't have a presence there? Is that like the sky falling or anything? Like, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think there's something too that they, Star Wars already has its own convention, and Disney has like its own convention. So you don't are you really wanting to start outsourcing your content to other
Somebody
conventions?
else.
Because like you don't have to do that because you're Star Wars, you're Disney, and things like that. It's like we already have 2 showcases, and the D23 I think is every year, and then however often they end up doing Celebration. So it's like we have plenty of showcase area. And look, I mean, if Star Wars wants to announce something, they don't need a convention to do it at. Like, it's not like they're not going to get any more publicity by doing it at a convention, or just doing a press release and releasing their trailer or whatever content it is that they want to release to us. So it's going to get seen by the masses. So I guess, for people attending San Diego Comic Con, and, they're going to be disappointed because it's like, well, I would have liked to have gone to a Star Wars panel. But, I get why they're doing it. And, and maybe we'll get something at D23. I don't know what that'll be. I don't think we're getting a trailer until October.
Well, I think it's a sizzle trailer, like the sizzle reel, excuse me, like the behind the scenes thing, which we kind of predicted.
We've talked. Have they announced that, or are we still just guessing?
I think it's a guess. I think it seems more concrete now than it was a few weeks ago.
But I mean, we're not getting a trailer till October, folks. So we're not, so let's just give up on that. And like
Debbie Downer again this week.
No, it's not. No, it's called Realistic. What's a girl's name that starts with an R?
Realistic Rhonda?
Yeah, Rhonda or Renee. Renee came to mind. That's my.
Oh, I dated Renee.
My sister's middle name is Renee. So I think it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh my God!
Well, I don't.
That's
know.
Okay.
I think it is Kimberly Renee. I'm not going to say her last name.
Yeah, just spit it all out. Why don't you give the address while you're at it?
I think it is.
Ahead.
I think it is. Her daughter's name is no kidding. So Kimberly, yeah. So it is Renee. So yeah, we'll call me Realistic Renee, or whatever. So that's cool. I don't know why I needed that much time to think of that, so let's move on.
Yeah, I know. You've killed a whole minute of a show, but go ahead.
But no, I mean, I'm not being negative. I'd rather be realistic.
That seems to be
honestly,
the trend.
And it's not being negative. I don't need the trailer right now. I don't have my heart set on it. I'm not hyped up over. I'm not getting overhyped. Like, oh, maybe we'll get it. Maybe we'll get it. Like, no, don't get your hopes up. Quit doing this to yourself. The movie is going to be out in 5 months, guys. So, it's almost here, but we're not going to really get any more as far as a trailer goes. We're not getting it till October at least. Maybe November, but I think we'll get it in October, and hopefully they'll do pre-sale tickets in October too. So,
hopefully on my birthday again, like last time. But you know what? But the funny thing is, if once we get that first trailer, and we'll just say it's October, we'll call it October, folks. Once we get that, I remember when we got into the very after Thanksgiving, or maybe that first week of December, all those commercials were coming out. Remember, I caught that Takodana, the planet there. I did a snippet on ESPN. I was watching, and it was on Twitter. And then our buddies over at Making Star Wars posted, oh yeah, they so we were getting new trailers every other day with that. So that's probably what'll happen. Open the floodgates. Now, I said to you privately the other day, I think last weekend or during last weekend, I said, you know what? Do you really even for Rebels, the final season of that, you would think they would insert a trailer here, and they might do that with D23. It's a good spot for it. But I said to you, they don't have to do that. They can just go on StarWars.com and just do it there, and people are going to watch it anyway. So I don't see it as a essential to do at at a convention. Just throw it up online and millions of people see it anyway.
And here's the thing. I mean, maybe people are waiting because they know things are coming about. But I mean, there's only how many thousand people at any convention. And then you're basing that off of wanting millions to watch a trailer or something online. And yeah, you're going to get those millions and millions of views. People at a convention, you're just the, I mean, this is a horrible comparison, but it's just there's, 50,000 people go to the Super Bowl, but how many people watch it on TV? Now, the Super Bowl is a whole other realm of things, and everybody watches it, even if you're not watching it. It's like on in the background, and everybody does parties and stuff. So I'm not saying everybody like that is going to go watch the Star Wars trailer. I'm not saying it's that immensely popular, but the people who want to see it are going to find it. So, yeah, this whole thing about, like, stuff has to be released at a convention, or there's a convention coming up, there has to be something there. It doesn't really make any sense. To me, the convention scene and stuff would be more for, and then don't get me wrong, initially, Comic-Con was a big thing for Star Wars, and, in
Correct,
1976. It helped Star Wars. It helped get a fan base going, and it grew a fan base out of that. So, it can have that effect. Now, Star Wars is so big, it doesn't even matter. That's what we're talking about. Now, another movie that might not be quite as popular, you're going to want to appeal to new fans. And the best way to do that is in person and having things like where you're interacting with people and promoting and talking with people, because you get, that one person you talk to, they might talk to 5 friends. So it's really that word of mouth. Star Wars is that one thing that doesn't need the word of mouth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so popular. I mean, you just say it or throw something online, it's news automatically, and we all consume it anyway.
Yeah, it's just a different way of looking at it, because everybody's like, well, Comic-Con, it's the biggest nerd convention in the world. How can you say these things, Mike and Joao? Because it's Star Wars, and Star Wars is, bigger than Comic-Con. It's literally like the Babe Ruth of, nerd culture. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, it's like Babe Ruth in baseball. Like, he was bigger than the sport. The guy hit more home runs in a season than the entire league did one year. Like, that's like how good he was. Like, he was insane back in the day. Like, like the most home runs ever had been 9, and he hit 27. And then the next year he hit 61. Are you kidding me? Like, I mean, so that's how
Joe's sports analogy changing the world every podcast.
But really, I mean, Babe Ruth, some people still consider Babe Ruth the best baseball player ever. Nobody would ever consider a basketball or a football player that played in the 40s. You name the awards after them, but they wouldn't. They're nowhere near the physical specimens that play now. But some people, I mean, still think Babe Ruth would be pretty good. So anyway, I mean, that's where I'm going with it. Star Wars is kind of the Babe Ruth of the nerd culture, and it's the way Babe Ruth was bigger than baseball and made baseball into what it is. Star Wars, in its own way, helped nerd culture become cool. If you get what I'm saying. Let me ask you
this. And we'll finish up right with this, is the only interesting thing Han Solo, if it doesn't get pushed back, is, all right, there's no Star Wars convention next. I guess you could do D23, but it would take place before then. So when would you drop a Han Solo trailer? Probably at New York Comic Con, maybe, but that's in October, and that's when you're going to drop the Last Jedi trailer. So I don't know when you're going to, that's the tricky one. When is that going to happen?
I've always wondered, like, because everybody always said, well, you can't drop the Rogue One trailer before the Last Jedi. People were wanting a Last Jedi trailer before Rogue One, right? Well, I can't remember which way it was. They wanted the Last Jedi trailer in front of Rogue One, and we were like, that's never going to. We didn't even know it was called The Last Jedi then. So we didn't have a title. You're not going to get a trailer.
Yeah.
So
this is a little different though.
Well, I mean, you can't. I don't think there's going to be the confusion that there was with Rogue One.
True
thing. So. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know when you could do it. Do they do the Han Solo? You'd release it online first, and then could it be attached to the Last Jedi trailer?
Probably.
Or do you just wait until January and then release it? I mean, you just release it online and say the heck with it.
Yeah, I'm curious how they're going to go with that. But anyway, let's get into our main topic, sir, which is, will Luke Skywalker be portrayed? Ooh, tongue twister, as the most powerful Force user ever in The Last Jedi? So this is a question, Joe, and there's been videos on YouTube and stuff that talked about how powerful is Luke and everything, but this is more of a philosophical aspect of that. Why would they show it be him being most powerful? And the more important thing is the character himself. Would he be one to give into that power, because you got to know, I've talked to you privately today, Joe, as we were getting ready for the show, and I emailed you, I said, well, one of the things we last left off Luke 30 plus years ago, he said, he threw his lightsaber and he basically gave up fighting in a sense when you look at it that way. Like he blazes his own path. He followed really the Jedi way, the original way, I guess it was meant to be, in the fact that, he just chose nonviolence over violence, and he chose to redeem his father and not give up and have that hope and everything. And now you flash forward and we see him a completely different person, which is obviously great for storytelling and everything, and you want to do that. And people evolve their opinions and perspectives over time anyway, so that'll be interesting with that. But I don't know, Joe, what do you think? From where we saw him in Return of the Jedi, and he seemed very at peace when he burned the suit of armor, and he saw Vader and Obi-Wan and Yoda with the Force ghosts there hanging out by the trees, and like hey, yeah, everything's cool, everything's great. Luke he goes off on his little missions there in Shattered Empire, but we don't get too much of Luke after that. I mean, we get little hints and things and stuff. And, the journey to the Last Jedi with this book coming out, the myth of Luke Skywalker or whatever. I'm sure we're going to get like half truths. It'll be very compelling and stuff. So I don't know. Where do you think his mindset is? And I probably asked you this before on the podcast, so you'll have to excuse me if I have. But because we're talking about how powerful he could be, what do you think? What would make him? Obviously, bad things have happened between there and there, but I mean, between Return of the Jedi and some point before The Force Awakens, things weren't too bad. And would he be willing to? I mean, I guess the bigger question is, all right, so if he's going on the path of the Jedi, being more peaceful, being more meditative, and all that stuff, and trying to find a diplomatic solution to issues and stuff like that, instead of just negotiating with the lightsaber and stuff like that, is he in the point where he's tempted by that dark side? Like we kind of mentioned before, like if he taps into that power, he's gone to the dark side in a sense. Like he gave into that power, which he kind of renounced in Return of the Jedi. I know that was a mouthful I spewed out there, so please take it away, sir.
Well, the first thing I want to touch on is just saying that, we talk about, could they reference, Luke being the most powerful Force user. We're going to use the word Force user because, and I know that some people point out, well, that's not a real term. Get over it. I'm going to use it because it's my show and I do what I want. And it's a legitimate thing, whether you want to agree or not, because
you can say Force wielder if you want.
I mean, Force wielder, user, whatever. There are people who use the Force, so it exists. So get over it. But here's the thing about it is that I wonder, and you have to wonder, would they be willing to break this ground? Well, they talk about Anakin. So Star Wars has gone to this point before about who's more powerful, about power. And it's a big thing. They went there in the prequels and they said, Anakin, you can be the most powerful of all the Jedi, even more powerful than Master Yoda. Nobody has a midichlorian count this high. What does it mean? I don't know. I mean, they've, the whole Chosen One thing. I mean, it's all based upon the most powerful. And then the reason, and that's why this question even comes up about Luke, because obviously he's the lineage of this Chosen One, this more midichlorians than anybody. So you'd think he'd have to be right up there, but he's had more time than Vader. He's been alive 20 more years than Vader. So he has to have 20 more years of experience and knowledge. He didn't, and well, you say, well, he didn't start till he was older, but Anakin didn't start till he was 9 and Luke was 19. So, okay, let's give Luke 10 years then on Vader. So he has 10 more years of experience than Vader did when Vader died, basically when we see him in The Force Awakens. So I guess I'm just throwing out the proverbial question. Is this something that they could actually talk about in the movie? And I think that it is. I think that it is, because I think that they've done it before. And I think that it's a legitimate question. Now, I don't know if they're going to somebody's going to sit down and they're going to have an actual discussion about this. I'm not saying that, but I think that it is possible that we're going there with Luke as far as seeing things. Now, I have reservations about how we'll see it or when we'll see it, but I guess I'll just get your opinion. You said like you wanted to say something there.
Well, I think they will discuss it because, The Force Awakens was about finding Luke, and now it's going to be, the interesting part is Leia sent Rey off on this mission with R2 and Chewbacca to find Luke. And then it seems like, all right, Leia's got to go in her role of rebuilding the Resistance or what's left of the New Republic and everything. And I'm wondering if there's going to be that discussion. She's going to have it with Poe about how powerful Luke could be, or, because she even says we have powerful friends, when they're in Jabba's palace. So it would be interesting if she mentions that and kind of continuing that line of where she's talking. Because in one aspect, as we always said, she's very much like Vader or Anakin. And it's funny that she mentions power. Like, she seems like that would go down into the power aspect of things, like mentioning it and talking about it. And she was the one who sent Rey on the mission. She was the one looking for Luke in the beginning. So it would probably come about that way.
Well, I mean, he had to have made a name for himself, too, if Rey says, I thought Luke Skywalker was a myth.
Well, he blew up the Death Star. He took down, all those stuff.
And I think it might even be even more so. Wouldn't it be? Like, could he have not even made more of a name for himself? And then it's
he might have.
Well, then it's
then he disappears.
But then do those things really happen? For her to say
which is that,
it's a myth, like it's, I mean, what me and you know is a myth, like it seems like an improper use of the term at this point, but it just, it makes you think, what else has he, kind of done, since then? Or maybe he hasn't done anything. Maybe it's completely based on him blowing up the Death Star, and maybe that's where that comes from, because I'm sure there was all kinds of tales about that. So,
well, the interesting, and then you might even hear it from Rey, where Rey is talking about it, but Rey is powerful in the Force as well. So you might get that interesting conversation with them, where Luke is kind of maybe resistance to all of this because he knows how powerful he is, and he knows, like you've always stated, that if he does it, I think he's afraid he'll go down the path of Vader, and that'll be that, and the whole galaxy's screwed because he's the most powerful. Yeah.
Well, and Snoke, we need to bring this up before we get more into this topic. Snoke says, the Jedi, if Skywalker returns, the Jedi will, or, they'll come back, and, that's not a good thing for him. But is it really the Jedi coming back, or is it Luke coming back that he's scared of? Like, I guess it's one and the same if you think about it.
Well, Luke is the catalyst of that.
If the same thing has to happen, but they already wiped the Jedi out once, but they didn't wipe Luke out. So isn't it Luke that he's really scared of? I mean, we've said this before on the podcast, but it's Luke, and I think that it's Luke in his power. And if Luke, I just have this feeling that if Luke unleashes his true Force power, like, everyone's going to be like, oh my God, what did he just do? And I think that's...
Well, I think that's what Snoke fears.
And I think that's maybe what Snoke fears, but I think us as the audience, Mike, I think that's what we're thinking could happen. That's why I don't think we're going to see him do anything until maybe the very end of The Last Jedi. I'll just go ahead and throw that theory out there. I don't think he's going to show us really, maybe a little something, if there's a Yoda-esque scene where Rey says, no, that can't be done. But I mean, are they really, if you do that, if you repeat that scene, like, people are going to go to town with it and rip it apart, but maybe they will do something like that. And Luke I'm not saying Luke won't use the Force, but we're not going to get any idea of his power until maybe the very end of The Last Jedi. And then we're going to be, I think, completely flabbergasted by it and be like, oh, like, that's what happens when Luke gets mad. That could have been what Vader could have been, or Anakin could have been, if, he could have lived up to maybe the potential and didn't get cut up and all of these things. So,
well, see, I'm under the impression that Luke is resisting all of this, and he's training her reluctantly. And I think he wants, and this is all speculation, my thoughts here. And so he's training Rey because Rey is going to be his, basically like Obi-Wan, like, Luke is my weapon, so to speak. So I'll send her off to do it. But there's a difference between Obi-Wan and Luke. Obi-Wan wasn't as powerful as Luke, and, all that other stuff. And, being the son of the chosen one and all this other stuff. where Luke is very resistant, and that's why he says the Jedi must end. Not that that's necessarily in the movie or whatever, but I think he's very resistant to do anything other than defend himself when he needs to, or Rey, but not in a way that's very harmful. However, when you throw Ben and Kylo in the mix and Snoke, and, you know, maybe something happens to his sister, which, by the way, happened to him before in Return of the Jedi. Vader mentions his sister, and he kind of loses his mind a bit. And he gets in that protective mode. That's when he becomes Anakin right there, is where he's like, I got to protect the one I love and defend him. And that leads me to, I tap into my anger and everything else, and that is not the way to go. I'm afraid, and I agree with you, I think it'll be at the very end of the movie where he just kind of loses it, which sets up episode 9 where we're all like, oh, what the bleep? What is going on here? Where even Rey might even be rattled by what he does. And she doesn't know what to make of it either. So, and who knows what Kylo's going to think and everything. And Snoke as well. Maybe Snoke dies. Well, no, he's not in this, supposedly the movie that much. So who knows what's going to happen? I think he will tap into something we've never seen before. And we're all going to be like, we just saw that. I might jump out of my seat because I'm a big Luke Skywalker fan and hoot and holler and be like jumping up and down and giddy as whatever when we get on the show to do the show and stuff like that. But, any more thoughts, Joa?
No, not particularly on that, but I mean, you know, you made some good points there, but I guess I want to move on to this, is that, you know, the idea, let's just pretend that Luke is as powerful as we're pretending or speculating that he is. So, like, is a good idea for the good guy to be more or a good guy to be more powerful than any of the bad guys? Because, you know, we kind of tend to think of this, we're like, oh, it's David versus Goliath. If, you know, you can't root, you know, you got to root for the underdog because... Well,
David became Goliath in this case. Like, he was the underdog. Now he is Goliath in a way.
I mean, but you look at it in a way, Mike, look at the other superhero genre type stuff. And I know Star Wars and Jedi, you know, they're not necessarily superheroes, but, you know, you can still look at, like, Superman and who's his arch nemesis, like Lex Luthor. Like, I mean, Lex Luthor can't match Superman in pure power, but, you know, and I'll leave it at that for now. Batman and the Joker can't beat him in a fight. The Joker just can't. If they just walk each other on an alley, a dark alley, Batman wins that fight. But here's the thing, and Snoke is scared of Luke, so that makes you think, well, you know, Snoke, he might be powerful, he might know some stuff, but I don't think he's as powerful as Luke. I don't think he's naturally as powerful as Luke in the Force. But what did Lex Luthor, what does the Joker, you know, and you look at Thor, he's kind of a Superman of the Marvel universe, but he has people that can outsmart him. And you have Lex Luthor. What does he use as his brain? The Joker uses
his money.
Yeah, and Joker uses psychology and chaos. And all of these other things to get into the head, and it's psychological warfare is what I'm getting at here. And so what did Kylo, obviously we know Kylo destroyed the Jedi, you know, the new Jedi, and, you know, betrayed Luke, and that scarred him. We know that has to be the case. But is that what did it? Is that what broke Luke's spirit? Did it break his mind to the point where he... And I think that's a reasonable assumption here, but I mean, that's what, no matter how powerful Luke is in the Force, he's not bringing all of those people back from the dead, basically. Like, he's not going to be Darth Plagueis here and bring everybody back from the dead. So I think in a way, in a strategic move, even the most powerful can be defeated. And so I think we can look past Luke. If he is more powerful, it's not necessarily a bad thing that he's stronger than the bad guys, because the bad guys are always going to be slippery and villainy, and, you know, and they're going to find a way to kind of screw over even the most powerful of good guys.
Well, how do you make a character? I mean, psychologically is always the easiest way, and money as well. And from all indications, what we know about Snoke is he's a regal kind of guy himself, so he would obviously have treasure because he's the head of the First Order. So he would have a lot of treasure anyway to spend on whatever he needs to do. But what would he... Because he's more... It seems Luke's not scared of Snoke, from my perspective. What we see, it's obviously Snoke is scared of him. I think Luke is more afraid of turning because he's going to have to kill his nephew.
I think, you said it, but Luke is afraid of himself. I think
maybe that's at the end. Yes,
I think that's what we've always kind of hinted at, or we've always said is Luke's own worst enemy is his lineage, basically. He's probably fighting the ghost of Darth Vader, even if it's just psychologically.
But here's the thing, though. He put that all to... Now, does this crap on Return of the Jedi? Because at the end of that movie, he overcomes that baggage, that family baggage, that whole his father was evil and did all these terrible things in a way, and Luke renounces all that darkness, and like Yoda did in his arc that he had there, where he kind of figures out, all right, there is a dark side to me, and I acknowledge that it's there, but I'm not going to let it control me, and that's kind of what Luke did here. However, you fast forward, a lot of bad things happen, obviously, and his nephew goes crazy, murders all his friends and Jedi friends, and who knows what else happened with him and Leia or Han and him and all these other factors that play into things. Like, does he blame him? Obviously, he blames himself for a lot of things. Says so.
You say he put the family issues to rest, but Ben is a part of his family, and he just rips the Band-Aid off. He rips the wound right off. And just because Luke won the day, do you not think...
Doesn't mean he won the war.
It doesn't mean he won the war even inside of his own head. For that day, he was stronger, and he did what he had to do. But do you not think back on instances in your life? And, that's human nature, where you're thinking back and you're like, man, like, even if you were right and you did the right thing, like, it doesn't mean that it wasn't traumatizing. And, you always talk about, or not you necessarily, but, with Adam, when we have him on a lot, we talk, he talks about the post-traumatic stress syndrome and things like that. And that doesn't have to necessarily be a warfare aspect. It's a traumatic incident happens in your life, and you suffer from it, and you have symptoms based on those things happening. So war is just probably a really good place to get those symptoms from, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm being facetious because it's not a good thing, obviously. But so, it's just...
It's that passion, because
Luke, I don't think Luke ever buried what happened between his father. I think there was always feeling. He died in front of him. There was sadness there because he finally got his father, and he only had him for a few seconds, and then he's gone. So I don't pretend to believe that Luke just brushes off the shoulder and he's just all hunky dory here. I mean, a lot of crap happened to Luke. And continued to happen to Luke, where we meet him in the Force Awakens and now The Last Jedi coming up. I don't believe that he just, that this whole family history, like, and so I don't believe that craps on the Return of the Jedi in that way. I don't think that it can, because it doesn't change what he did in Return of the Jedi, but he can't control everybody's actions after that, and he can't control that it affects him emotionally.
All right, fair enough. So let's get into if he's in this emotional state, Joa, where he's, I guess, renouncing the Jedi way in a sense, because he's finding a different path, so to speak. Like he's, the Jedi way was, don't give in to your lust, your anger, your aggression, your jealousy, and all that stuff. Whereas Luke is trying to find this balance. Obviously, I think that's the key with him. Maybe this is why. It's almost like Bindu and even the father. He's trying to find a balance between the good, the evil, but it doesn't necessarily mean all of that either. It means, just finding a balance where you're kind of indifferent to a lot of things anyway. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on his state when it comes to with the philosophy of the Jedi? Is he freeing himself up by, like renouncing, say, the Jedi way, so to speak? So now he can tap into these other emotions and use them in the Force way. Now, that doesn't mean, you can use your passion and your anger. Well, I guess anger is a bad word, but your lust or maybe your passion for something and use it in a good way, whereas the Jedi would still frown upon that, so to speak. I don't know. What are your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually like two different definitions of passion. Like a passion, the way me or you would use it in everyday life, Mike, that would actually be a good thing. Be like, man, he really has a passion for what he does. Like, his job or, his family or whatever, and he's just really into it. Like, that's good quality. But in philosophy, passions, as you kind of already stated, they're instinctive, emotional, primitive in a human being. That's the big word for me. And it includes the lust and the anger and the aggression and the jealousy. And that's what, in philosophy, that's what a human must restrain from. And he's got to channel it and be sublime and all this crap. So,
well, that's what we mentioned a few weeks ago with Plagueis and the wise and stuff. Yeah.
And I'm really getting, it's like, man, I just got to, after I get through this Joseph Campbell stuff, like I'm moving on to like philosophy books. Cause like, it's just, I'm like so intrigued by stuff. So it's like, not necessarily that I agree with everything that's being said. It's just really cool to like get these different perspectives and things like that and how people think about things. So, but anyway, my question is that, I know that the meanings of those words are they almost mean two kind of different things in those ways. And maybe the way the Jedi talk about it, and Anakin says the Sith use their passion for their strength. So is he just talking about their lust and anger, their lust for power maybe, and their anger, obviously they're angry because they're Sith, and their aggression, which is violence, and jealousy because the Jedi have what we want and we need to take it from them. But I'll say this, jealousy, not necessarily an attractive trait, but it can lead to good things. Like you can get motivated to be better. You could be jealous of somebody. I'll just say this, Mike. You could be jealous of somebody else's body and be like, I want to look like that. And you could work out and you could eat better and you could get that body because, so that jealousy could be turned into a motivation, or it could be a money thing or whatever you want to do, a career thing. So I'm just saying, like, some of these things, and then, sometimes aggression, like I was saying earlier, if we have aggression, if we didn't have aggression and everybody was just a good person, and I might have been saying this off the air, but if everyone was just a perfect person, where would we be, like, as society? Like, I don't think technology would be where it's at. I don't think, what would ever get done? We'd just all be sharing, bread and wine. Like we'd be walking around barefoot like hobbits. Like I don't think anybody, sometimes unfortunately, the shifting of money and all this gets done because other people are super aggressive and they might be looked at as slime balls, in some aspects of ethical things, but that's the way business kind of works, and look where we're at, I mean, so it's like a give and take. It's like a pro and con. Like, do you like air conditioning? Yeah, sure. I like air conditioning. Well, but maybe we don't have that if people are still just sitting around in huts, I guess. So,
well, see, here's the thing. In my old philosophy class long ago, when I was in my college days there, like, the whole 2 years or 4 years that I went, or whatever you want to call it, this is a question that was asked to us. Could you create? He put us in little groups, like 2 or 3 of us together, and said, "Create the perfect world, and give me the pros and cons about it and stuff like that." And we went on and on. And I came back and said, "You can't create a perfect world because there'll be no checks and balances. There won't be any strive for like greatness or breaking new ground or having the next generation." Take it better than the following the other generation, all those type of things. You can't have a perfect world. There's going to be evils in that said world, but the good will always outweigh, in my mind, the bad that's in that world. It'll always triumph over evil, I guess. And that's a morality, and that's in Star Wars as well. That's one of the themes in Star Wars is good always triumphs over evil in the end. And yeah, evil may have its day for a while, but good comes to a while. Of course, now looking at the perspective now that we have, Joa, with all the things we know with the Clone Wars, the Force, the Mortis Arc, and all that other stuff, it seems like there's an ebb and flow of the Force as well. And the Force at one point wants to go to the bad side or the good side, just because you can't have too much light or darkness, as the Father says, because it'll destroy the fabric of the universe. So you got to find that nice balance. You know what I mean? So, but continue if you have anything else to say.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's stuff about that in philosophy about the balance, and and I just wonder, do we not, dehumanize ourselves if we become completely rid of passion? And there are religions and things where it says this is what you should do. You shouldn't have passion in your life to these things, but
Well, passion and love is what set Anakin free in the end by Luke. His love and his passion, I guess you could say, for his father.
But it's also what encased
brought him down. Yes, it's double. It's two sides of the same coin. You know what I mean? It's like a double-bladed sword. Yeah,
it's a balance in between that you have to find. I think is what we're getting at. But I mean, you can dehumanize yourself by killing millions of people, and you can dehumanize yourself by taking away all of your primitive instincts. Like it's twofold. You can go so one way, this way, and be like the Jedi and be like, don't have any passion, don't care about anything, but you're supposed to care about everybody, but you can't really actually care about anybody. You're just supposed to care about everybody. Like, how does that work in your mind? Like, how do you trick yourself into that? And then on the other side, now I'm not saying, I mean, there's things where, I mean, that's the Jedi way, and that way you can relate that to real life things where people are trying to teach that way of life. I don't get it. Like, I don't get how I don't get it. I mean, maybe it's through meditation, maybe it's through this, that, the other. It's something I don't completely understand. I'll just throw it out there. But so either way, you can dehumanize yourself from my perspective, from being too monotone and be like, oh, you're robotic and just don't care about anything. Or you're like Vader and you don't care about anything because you become basically the epitome of evil.
Well, let me ask you this then. Yoda says to him before he goes off and does his, becomes Vader, he says, train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Essentially, after Padme is gone, he kind of does that. And he dehumanizes himself and he just taps into that anger and that lust for power and revenge and all these other things where, and that's where you come into the, like, when you think about it, when you ask, like, you turn to Yoda and say, if I do that, then I'm stripping away my human side and my, my love for things like my friends, my family, or even for my fellow human, or alien or sentient being, whatever it may be. Whereas I become so indifferent, like nothing, there'll be no good in a sense. Like the Jedi would be too robotic and too sterile, which is what happened to them actually at the end of the day, because they got like that, and then they couldn't help anybody, and they couldn't even help themselves. What I mean?
I'll say this, and I just want to bring this out. I know we're getting a little off topic of Luke, but this was something that jumped out to me today. Aristotle criticized the Spartan polity by critiquing the disproportionate elements of the Constitution, e.g., they train men and not women, and this is what I have bolded here, they trained for war but not peace. Now, this is the exact opposite of the Jedi. They trained for peace and peacekeeping and not war. And they say this in the movies. We're not soldiers. They're not in a one-on-one situation. Yes, a Jedi is trained and they can pretty much disarm anybody in the galaxy. But for a war, they're not even mentally. There's no way they were mentally able to handle what they were doing, because the Jedi is a lot of they're fighting machines, and I think that was a lot of them were machines, with the droids and stuff, and I think that's how George kind of tried to make it, even more the man versus machine, because that's what it was with the Death Star originally and everything. But I mean, there was still other humans and other things.
Well, there's that old saying, it's and I got it right here. You teach me. A student asked his master, "You teach me fighting, but you talk about peace a lot." And then he says, "Well, how do you reconcile the two?" And the master replies, "It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war." So it's good to be both, in a sense. Like, you should know how to fight, but you should always seek peace first. Yeah,
I think the Jedi were good warriors, like in single combat, but I don't know how well they were equipped to take on an actual war.
Yeah, like
an actual war. Peace they could keep. Like, that's what they were. They're keepers of the peace. Like border disputes and things like that, like now they're asked to get into a war, and Windu's like, we're keepers of the peace. We're not soldiers here, but that's what they're asked to be. And that, I mean, that's obviously one of Palpatine's great coups there, that he's basically put the Jedi in this situation. But getting back to Luke, I mean, I think that's why he sees, maybe if he studies the history of the Jedi, that's why he's looking at it like, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep this going, because the Jedi, when's the last time they've had any semblance of like what they were actually supposed to be? And, and it goes back to that point I made way back when the trailer came out, was if there's Jedi, there's always going to be somebody there to compete with them. And if, with that competition comes war, and with war comes chaos and all of these things. And it's just like, maybe it's just better off if we just leave everybody else out of it. But in the same regard, if you have the Knights of Ren or the Sith or whatever you want to call them, if you have the bad side of the Force, then you have to have some kind of the good side of the Force. And I think that's where we come back to it. It's the balance. It's like, but if Rey is that balance, how is she supposed to just be able to make everyone cooperate and see, you guys were missing it the whole time. You should just be in the middle, right? And they're going to be like, nah, I still want power, or, and things like that. So it's such an interesting thing, and I don't have any answers to it, but I mean, it just, the whole concept of balance.
Well, is Luke looking at it is Luke looking at it as almost like that quote that was in the Jurassic Park, the first one, where he says, dinosaurs, they had their shot, and that's it. They're done. And maybe Luke, after the fall of the second Jedi Order, is looking at it like, all right, this obviously isn't working. Because like you say, if the Jedi are there, then the Sith are coming. Or in this case, the First Order. There's always that bad guy element coming after you and wiping you out. If I find a thing where I'm in the middle, I'm really not competing with said bad element or anything. I'm just neutral. I'm just like, I'm doing my thing. And if you mess with me...
Remember what we talked about with Charette and how he didn't manipulate the Force. He just listened to it. Yeah. And so maybe that's the thing. And we talked about the morality. We've talked about this, the morality of actually manipulating the Force. And is this a good thing? I mean, this is like taking, God's power in your own hands, per se, on Earth. Like, that you hear the stories about what, God could do, or Jesus could do. He could turn water into wine. He could walk on water. He could do all of these miraculous things. And you look at a Jedi and look at all the miraculous things that they can do. But I'm not questioning the religious side of it, but I'm saying for the Jedi, should they be dabbling in this stuff? Is it, even if they say, well, this is the good side, this is the light side, should anybody be doing anything with the Force, or should it be laid to rest and left alone, and whatever will come, in all the galaxy, they can fend for themselves. But we got to get the bad side, and then we got to get rid of the good side. And only then, when there's no Force users left, that'll be the balance in the Force. I don't know. Is that a crazy theory? I mean, but because that's kind of what I've said. It has to be the end of people using the Force, is kind of where I'm thinking.
Well, it's kind of where I think Rey is here to wipe out the Skywalker anomaly. If you go back to the book with Plagueis there, where him and Sidious created that rift in the ripple in the Force, and the Force created Anakin because of it, and maybe that wasn't the initial plan, and now Rey, the Force wills things into existence here, and Rey's around, and Luke realizes this, and like, well, Rey is going to have to kill me at some point, and she's the only one that could probably kill me. And so here's the deal, or I'm going to have to off myself or something. Something's going to happen where it's that way where Rey and him take out Snoke and Kylo to a degree, and then at the end, he's going to, maybe he just becomes one with the Force.
It just becomes like the Neo thing in the Matrix. That's where we go with this. It just sounds like, it's like, no, I'm just going to reset everything and remake all the rules to the whole galaxy. Like basically how kind of like Neo did. It was just like, he was that Jesus figure in the, they kind of say you can see it in the Matrix thing, or the fire or whatever, when after Neo dies in those movies in the Matrix, that it's kind of looks like he was on the crucified, basically, like that cross symbol or whatever with his body. I don't know. I don't really see it, but people say that. But I that's what it always reminds me of, is like the resetting of the rules, like the Matrix, when we talk about things like that. And it's like, I don't know if I like that because it didn't really work in The Matrix and nobody really bought it and it didn't really fly very well and people didn't like those last two movies. So it's like I just kind of worry about going that kind of direction with Star Wars where it's like we're just going to start killing off all the Force users, and I just can't see that happening. I think that
unless
Luke might think that's the answer, and then some other revelation ends up happening where it's not really the answer. Because let's face it, you can't kill off the idea of if you kill off Force users in Star Wars, you kill off any chance of 10, 11, and 12 unless you just completely rewrite the story.
Well, I'm going to say this, and I think I might even mention this before, and I'm going to bring Ray into this again, and Star Wars ring theory stuff in a way, because the past kind of repeats and, the next generation kind of goes through the same thing, whereas I could see Luke being lost kind of is very similar to Anakin was being lost, and that was his father. So if we're going to go this route, you could say Rey does the same with Luke. She pulls Luke back to the Jedi way, and she saves her father. You could look at it that way. That's one way I see it, and I hope that kind of happens. That would be pretty neat. I mean, a lot of people probably complain about it, but like, oh, well, you're just doing the same thing, and they don't realize that Star Wars is repeating themes throughout, each generation and stuff, and people, for some reason, it goes over people's heads. I don't understand that, but in any case, I don't know. I don't think they're going to wipe out. Unless this is going to be the last of the Skywalker line, and this is the last of the episodic things, which I highly doubt Disney would do. I imagine they're going to continue it. But how long can you continue the episodic episodes? You know what I mean? How long can you go before it starts getting into circus part? Just, Looney Tunes repeating itself and kind of all right, we've seen this dog and pony show. So, which is why I go back to what Adam said at the top of the show. He wants to break new ground, and I think that's needed now. So if there's any time you're going to try to do something different, this is now the time. Although it's dangerous because if you do it wrong, there's a whole lot of heat coming your way. That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, I think we're going to wrap this up, Joe, unless you got anything else to bestow upon us.
One more, a fun little thing with Luke and the power. And we talk about maybe he could display that power. We talked about that. So what would you want to see if you could? And, everybody's got that image of the Star Killer guy from the video game pulling the Star Destroyer out of the sky and crashing
Maybe pulling Snoke's. That would be cool.
Well, pulling Snoke's face off. Just the skin off his face with the Force. And no, anyway. What I
he might have done that already,
Luke
but
being on the Star Destroyer, and he's basically a ticking time bomb, and the Star Destroyer just by his mind starts to explode piece by piece from within. If you get what I'm saying, him and Snoke are having a conversation. Snoke pisses him off, and he's kind of just got his arms crossed, and he's looking at him. And his demeanor never changes, and all of a sudden explosions start. They didn't set any bombs off. They didn't set anything off like in The Force Awakens with, when they're setting charges. It's just his mind ripping crap apart. That would be an ultimate Luke Skywalker moment for me.
You should go watch Looper. There's a moment in that movie with the kid who's like a Jedi, you could say, and there's something like that happens. And that is probably what you're going to see Luke do. And that could be a bad thing because I think I'm not saying I don't know what he's going to do, but whatever he does, I think it's going to shake us because it's going to say, oh crap, he just he tapped into the dark side there from our perspective.
Could you imagine? We know this movie is going to end on some kind of a cliffhanger, right? Could you imagine? Well, I mean, mostly just because Empire Strikes Back, I say that. But yes, The Force Awakens was sort of a cliffhanger, but it had its own resolution in a way. They just kind of added in a piece of maybe 8 to it. But could you imagine something like that happening, like what I was just talking about, and then Luke kind of turns into the camera, and his eyes are a different color, he's so pissed. Oh my God!
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't think you'll get that.
I don't think we would get it either.
I was going to say that.
But could you imagine the audience? First night. I'm talking first night of showing in the theater. Could you imagine the response in the theater Like, what would the response be? I think there would be some people hooting and hollering, yelling, screaming. I think some people would be aghast by it. I think some people would be
I'd be
shocked.
appalled.
And that's where Rey has to step in and be like, this isn't you. Because we've been talking about this for a year and a half, Mike, about Luke. He's staying away because he could turn to the dark side because of what Ben did to him. He can't deal with this. And now Rey has brought him back into it, and now he has to deal with it. He went away for his own salvation, I think. So, I don't know. I mean, it would be, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't have any inside information, folks. I'm just totally theory crafting here and just thinking about like what would be kind of like an epic moment, like where it would just be, we would just all be jaw dropped at it.
Well, my point is, if we have this moment like you see in Looper, and I recommend you watch Looper.
Is it on Netflix? I've been meaning to watch it for 2 years, and
I saw it on TBS one of those stations. It was on.
You know what?
But here's the thing:
after we stop recording.
Okay, perfect. As I was saying, from our perspective as the audience and what we know previously of Luke. Now, our audience and you and I, and all those within the know, I guess you could say, if you listen to a Star Wars podcast or if you go to a fan site or something like that, you're kind of in the know and you kind of get where things are maybe going, and you know the character Luke better than like the general audience, where they would be aghast and like, oh my God, Luke just turned bad. Whereas you and I, we've dissected Luke in a way, and we've talked about his character and what could the possibilities of this be and that be, where he pulls this crazy move off and it looks bad to everybody else, but as we've discussed, all right, based on that trailer, he says the Jedi need to end. He's thinking differently. And from our perspective, or the audience's perspective, he may look like he's doing something bad, but he's actually doing something good or indifferent in a way, because his mindset is in the point of like, I'm in the middle. This doesn't matter. This doesn't really mean much to me, but I'm just defending myself or whoever is with me and stuff. Now, Rey might see that and be like, holy crap, what do I do now? Because he just took that guy out with just like blinking, basically, and all this other stuff. So what I think will happen, I don't know. I just know it's going to be something along those lines, I think, Joe, where it's going to make us question Luke's character, because that's what you'd want going into 9. You'd want us to be like, oh my God, Luke's going to be bad. Is he bad? Is he not bad? I don't know. What is this? It's almost like
it'd be like revealing the snake thing in Harry Potter from the 6th book to the 7th book. Is he bad? Like, we know he's good. Like, everybody knew Snape was good, but there was this like 1% question, like, but is he bad? Yeah. Like, did he like he killed Dumbledore, but he did it for the right, like, we know he did it for the right reason, right?
You might get a similar reason.
That's
like
kind
that.
of what I'm thinking. Like, everybody kind of knew, if you read the books and you knew where it was going, it was like, you knew Snape probably had to still be good, and he did it for a reason. But it was still like, he still killed Dumbledore, and that's shocking. And like, how are you going to explain this off? Because he's a good guy, right? And so that's where it's going to be. Like, that would be amazing if they could pull something of that quality off. I would say, I'm not saying rip that off, but I'm just saying,
but something of that line,
pull that kind of quality storytelling off. That would be amazing.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's going to be something leaving us questioning and going into 9. It's like almost like
we need
Luke
the Rey thing again, but we need the Rey question kind of pretty much answered. We need to have a new thing where we're questioning it going into 9. Like, I think that would be the smart move. Just leave us, if we're still walking away from this movie and our biggest question is who is Rey's parents,
then nothing's progressed.
Yeah, this movie didn't do its job, in my opinion. Like, this movie, if that's the biggest question, I'm not saying it can't still be a question, but if that's the biggest question, then it was just a waste of a movie, basically. And I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, then it becomes an adventure of Rey and Luke. And maybe that's not a bad thing, but we need something deep. And in my way, this, you know how we got the I am your father moment in Empire? This would be that moment, but it wouldn't be I am your father. Well, that would be in 9 when he finally says, yeah, I'm your dad. And, you know, we got all these people that mad at us for, you know, but anyway. So that would be the moment where you're like, oh, well, and then it makes me think of Empire in the sense that, like, when Vader reveals that I am your father, everyone's like, no, he's lying. He's lying. That's a bunch of nonsense. He's just lying and manipulating Luke here. He's just trying to get into him and all that other stuff. And we would be left with that kind of cliffhanger of like, is Luke going to go bad? Is he going to go? And then we'll have like several podcasts. Luke is bad. Luke isn't bad. Could he be bad? Is he in the middle? We'd have 400 other podcasts between now and the next episode 9, and that would be great. But that's how I think. What would I personally like to see him do? As much as I hated the Force Unleashed, I always thought it was cool Vader pulling the ship out of the air. That would be pretty cool. I think that would be tacky and foolish if they did it in the movie, but I would like to see something epic. I'll leave it at that. Like, I want to see something completely, like, finally. We saw Anakin, he was pretty good, but we never saw that unleashing of his full potential because obviously he went into suit, he became Vader and everything. He was limited. One of the best
things, Mike, in The Revenge of the Sith, I remember got a huge reaction the first time I watched it in the theater, which was a midnight showing, was when Yoda walks into the Emperor's office towards the end of the movie, and he just waves his arm, and the 2 guards just fly up against the wall and go limp, and the crowd lost it. They were cheering, they were laughing. It was a mixture of everything. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something so awe-inspiring. It can just be a slight maneuver, and I think that's the key to it. Is it's not going to be Luke jumping around like Yoda and going ballistic and being like the old prequel Jedi.
No,
I think it's
you might not even get a saber.
I think it's like it's just going to be him. His moment is just going to be him, and he's just going to look pissed or indifferent, or something is going to happen. And it's going to be so subtle, and all crap is going to hit the fan, and that's kind of how I envision it. I'm not predicting anything, but that's kind of how I envision it, and kind of how I hope it happens.
I'm wondering if we're gonna, and I'll just wrap this up. We'll wrap this up here, Joe. I'm wondering if we're gonna get Rey and Luke parting ways at the end because he does this crazy maneuver, and she's shaking, and he is too. So he's like, I got to check out, and then eventually he comes back around. And maybe does the sacrifice in 9 and kind of reveals, okay, Rey, I am your dad, or no, I'm not your dad. This is what really happened, blah, blah, blah. That type of thing. That'll be, I'm curious. I mean, I hope we get something epic. That's all I can say, and that's what I want. I don't know what it is. I just want to be like, my mouth hit the floor and us coming back to podcast and me just going on for like an hour and a half of what he did and not even getting to everything else that happened in the movie. But anyway, I think we're going to wrap that up, Joe. We're a little longer than normal, but tell them where to like us, find us. Unless you have anything else to inject, go ahead and do that before we wrap up.
No, I'm good. We'll do it. Get us on Twitter and Instagram at The Cantina Cast, Facebook.com/The Cantina Cast. You can find us on Patreon.com/The Cantina Cast, Facebook /The Cantina Cast. I don't think I said that. Maybe I did. Who cares? Say it again. And Cantina Cast fan mail at gmail.com. And you can always leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you're listening on.
Of course. Yes, exactly. All right, well, we're going to out of here. Next week will be Monster Nick's episode, I believe. Yep. So tune in for that. Yeah, that'll be a fun time, and we'll see you guys next week. You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.